In the year 20XX, world-renowned scientist Dr. Light introduced the world to his theory on robots with independent thoughts. His creations ushered into a new age with robots taking on all sorts of jobs to benefit humanity. However, this was a double-edged sword. Along with the potential to improve humanity, this new technology could also be abused, enabling the likes of Dr. Wily, who reprogrammed countless robots to do his evil bidding. After Wily's first attempt at world dominance, Light began to rack his brain around a concept. What if a robot could determine right from wrong? What if a robot could break the rules of robotics, but for the right reasons? For years, he would work on this concept, and one day, it bore fruit. His ideal robot was no longer susceptible to reprogramming, one that could make its own decisions, one that had true free will, but a sense of morality. The first of a new breed of robot, Light's life work, Megaman X. So just to start off setting one thing straight, X is not the same as Megaman. He's not an upgraded version, like a conversion, he's his own bot. The two are entirely separate entities. And I say this because I, like many others, believed X was just rock after he hit, a Mario mushroom. X is the bridge that Light sought to bring harmony and cohesion between humans and robots. A new type of robot that could think and feel for itself. As described in one source, X has a fully functional brain like a human, where each lobe is a set of programs and circuits, where program data that mimics the DNA of a human is processed. X is frankly unfathomable from a technological standpoint. At least Rock and the Robot Masters, we understand being as how AI is, well, like in today's world. But Light arguably created life with Megaman X. Such a dramatic leap forward held many dangers though, and Light himself could not be sure of the integrity of what he'd created. Before proper activation, X was sealed in a capsule set to undergo proper testing, training, or like what I really presume it was, mentoring. Ensuring that X would make the correct choices in life. I've seen some believe it was a simulation training, and it could be that, but I like to think it was Light ways of raising his own child. However it was done, X would remain sealed for much longer than the anticipated 30 years, as in time Light would pass away. While you might think that someone would find X after clearing out his estate, there's enough clues that X was built in secrecy, in a hidden lab. And it wouldn't be until 100 years later that a new scientist would discover the blue robot. While on an archaeological venture, this new scientist, Dr. Kane, would find X and release him. By studying X, he was able to prevent X from being a one-of-a-kind robot, recreating this new breed of robots, of which he named Reploids. Now, as you probably know, these robots would end up with glitches, errors, viral infections, which would cause them to go mad, harm humans, and, other Reploids alike. These Reploids became known as Mavericks, and as the problem grew, a military assembled, ready to fight the Mavericks in an attempt to keep peace. Enlisting, X would remain as a low-rank hunter for some time, fighting alongside his best friend and most trusted ally, Zero. Eventually, though, X would rise through the ranks, taking command of the hunters. Okay, so I know that was a lot of background, but it is pretty important to the character of X. He is the foundation for a whole new series, world, and future series at that. But now y'all know how he came to be, so let's take a look at what all X is packing under the hood. He's not the protag for nothing after all. Light's masterpiece is a work of wonders, starting with his general material. X's armor is made out of lightweight titanium X composite. While lightweight, it is said to be the strongest metal in the world, and its only application appears to be X. Even into the ZX era, Light's previous metal, Ceratanium, is sought and considered nigh invincible. Atop this armor though, X comes equipped with an elastic armor skeleton, aiding in his overall defense. And speaking of defense, fearing of future threats like Roboenza, Light developed X with a perfect antivirus system. It seems to act more like an immune system, fighting off viruses that make their way into his circuitry. And defense is one thing, but what kind of heat is he packing? The Rockbuster Mark 17 is just that. Clearly Light's final take on the Mega Buster, the X-Buster is tremendously powerful. Just look at what a single charge shot from it can do. It absolutely wrecks others. This buster takes solar energy that X has garnered and transforms it into a high output beam. Thanks to an energy amplifier, it can, as I previously said, charge up for a stronger, much more devastating blast. As well, because all Reploids are founded on his design, he's able to make use of their weaponry by either making use of Reploid DNA or snagging a chip that holds their weapon data. X can use his buster to recreate that attack with his variable weapon system. That's not all though. If you've ever taken a gander at the US box art, you've likely noticed that X doesn't look like, well, like a Mega Man. He's all white with a splash of other colors here and there. And that's because X has additional armors that power him up in a multitude of ways. In fact, each game introduces a new one. Now, as much fun as it'd be to go over all of them, that's just too much for one video, and I've already covered a few of them on their own. While we're not going to look at them all, there actually are a few that help X evolve in some manner, increase his base abilities that carry over from one game to the next. Playing through the SNES titles, you may have noticed that the charge shot changes a bit, going from a standard blueberry blast to a cotton candy one. Way back in the day, many of us just assumed this was a leftover effect from the buster parts that gave X his power to shoot earthworms. But many years later, this would actually be confirmed in let me check my notes. Yes, an X8 interview. It took us to the last game they'd make to address some of this, and while not directly talking about the pink and blue shots, they leaned into the X in his name representing limitless potential, and stated that over time, X grows and evolves with his experience, and that is why he retains some armor-specific abilities in later games, such as the air dash. This also explains why X's X8 standard buster gets to go beyond a standard charge. When it comes to who is X, he's one of the most transparent characters in the franchise, written to have great emotional depth. He constantly worries over outcomes, questioning if he is in the right at times, or if the means will justify the actions, if the consequences are worth it. It's this worrying that fuels his pursuit for a peaceful solution when possible. To which, I wouldn't say X is a true pacifist, but rather a conditional one. He wants to find amicable paths for all parties, but he also knows that sometimes force is a requirement. Heck, there are times he gets fully into it.
Sigma, your maverick plan stopped right here! I'll finish this! Right here, right now! I will defeat you, Sigma!
Ooh, chills every time. Mark Gaffa, you are missed. While he's not constantly a little ball of fury, X is known to get angry, being passionate in the causes he believes in, and he doesn't hide it. Even in the later games, like X8 or Command Mission, X doesn't mince words, and even in the latter comes in hot more often than not. There was a time when X did try to step away, and many of us choose to ignore that game, but nonetheless, it did happen. Even trying to stay out of conflict, X couldn't stand by knowing he can make a difference, and that is the key defining feature to him. He's heroic, courageous, stepping up to the plate when he knows he has to. Eventually though, time catches up with him, fighting despite not wanting to, being pushed to the edge over and over again. X continued the fight, having to process traumatic events over and over. Betrayal left a mark, corruption stung like a hornet, losing those close to him over and over. Throughout all the X games, and many years after, X had no option but to continue to fight, and thus, he became numb to all the conflicts. Courage would be the enabling factor for him throughout the ages. The overall military record for X here would be nothing short of unfathomable. I mean, just a recap, because this is a basics on, not a synopsis of every single game story, X here squashed Sigma's initial rebellion, which included several other hunters who defected, hunted down the remaining forces while being challenged by the formidable counter-hunters, infiltrated Doppler Town and stopped the Mad Doctor himself, was forced into a conflict between two superpowers, witnessed a colony drop and dealt with its aftermath, investigated a mysterious new type of virus that was ravaging the Reploid race, tried to keep out of the fight for a game we don't talk about, but then was roped back in, and took on a whole new generation of Reploids that challenged and broke his moral philosophy. I mean, that's not me even going into the side game stories. The guy went through a lot. As I said before, he grew numb with all the constant fighting. Eventually, his work would begin to pay off, and things would begin to look up for the blue hero a bit. X would break ground for his dream, a utopia for humans and Reploids. Found in what would be known as Neo Arcadia, humans lived safely inside domed cities, as the Earth itself had become too harsh for them. Mavericks remained, however, and X continued to fight against them. The frequency of these conflicts would eventually take a drastic drop, as a new discovery, the Cyber Elves, programmed lifeforms with a will of their own, allowed the creation of the ultimate Cyber Elf, the Mother Elf, of which X used to rid the world of the Sigma virus, the leading cause of Mavericks. But the peace he fought so hard to obtain would once again be threatened by a split in his own government. Those who feared Reploids and the danger the Mavericks brought conspired to use the Mother Elf to enslave the Reploid race, and those who would stand against them, preventing the Mother Elf from falling into their hands. 4 years of this fighting occurred, and the results were catastrophic. So much life was lost. In order to prevent misuse of the Mother Elf, X sealed her away, using his own body, as his perfect antivirus system would not be affected by her. The sheer shock of sealing her ejected his soul from his body, and it splintered into 5 cyber elves. These would later become what I think is fair to say his biological children, the 4 Guardians. While the last seemingly retained his sense of self and wandered aimlessly, tired of all the conflicts. Even in his elf form, he would return to the battlefield, but this time as a support for Zero, until he eventually just couldn't manifest any longer. X was able to rest for a bit before being called on one final time. He would return in the events of Mega Man ZX, where, effectively, his soul is bound to a new technology known as biometal. As a new floating rock, X is able to lend his strengths over to those he deems worthy and believes in. Though he himself is no longer directly fighting, he continues to aid the protagonist to help keep world peace. X would also appear in a spin-off title, Command Mission, a game that takes place in an alternate future from the Zero series, so none of that Cyber Elf stuff happened. Here, X gets a whole new sleek design that is labeled as his stealth armor, where his scarf emits from his back disrupts radars. Kinda cool that the Capcom classic red scarf has a purpose. In this story, X infiltrates a man-made island that has been taken over by a rebellion of Mavericks. The game's actually a turn-based RPG, which allows for many moments to flesh out X as a character, showcasing his compassion and zero tolerance for Mavericks.
Red Ips! You Maverick!
I always appreciate it, because it's one of the few times when X needs to throw hands, he doesn't hesitate. X isn't exclusive to the games either. There's a few mangas out there that cover his series stories, with Iwamoto's run being the usual go-to for most X fans. The run was really able to lock in on X's distaste for fighting, while showcasing just how terrifying he gets when you unlock his tired of your crap mode. One of the biggest deals with this run is that X is the only Reploid able to cry, and even shows great disgust to the point of throwing up upon seeing corpses. These moments are used as a means of storytelling to display X as being an exceptionally special Reploid. The series is great, and X pulls off some crazy moves, like how he drags Vile atop a building and then just power bombs him. It's brutal, but cool. It also introduces a love interest for X, a pirate girl named Marty. Now, a more unique approach at the guy was Ruby Spears. Good lord, look at those cheese-grating abs! Yes, he received his own episode, and it's said that there were tentative plans to use this episode to launch a fully fledged Mega Man X Ruby Spears series. Ah man, what could have been. They don't deal much with X's backstory, but he does take the time in this episode to essentially make his creation a self-fulfilled prophecy. In this world, X, as well as his enemies, are vastly superior to the classic crew. Mega can't even deal damage to a Maverick, And when X copies Snake Man's weapon, they make it clear his tech goes beyond. One of the extra things they did, though, was give X some pink shades that allow him to track radiation, heat, who knows what else. I really do kind of dig the look. Capcom also had a digital card game that recently ended, Teppen, and as you might have guessed, X was a main character in it. While the story to Teppen is kinda all over the place and weird things happen, but it had some crazy stuff in it. What I wanted to actually point out was that X has a whole new design for this. He gains his Cyber Elf halo, has a ball for a belly, super blue eyes. It's definitely different, to say the least. And lastly, there's a full-on novel about the first game's events. If you want to deep dive into X's thoughts, his personalities, his trials, this is the place. The book goes more into his discovery and how he handles fighting friends and even confronting Sigma. Explanations on how his systems work, it kinda covers all the bases. If you don't like to read books without pictures like me, don't worry. There are some, and they're even drawn by manga artist Iwamoto himself. And here we are at the end. I'll go so far as to say that X is the most popular Mega Man, at least here in the West. And if you didn't know why before, hopefully you do now. He really is the true successor to his older brother Rock, and maybe one day, we'll get X9 and continue his tale. Till that day comes though, rock on my Mega fans.